I stayed silent as she raved, then pushed the county survey across the table and saw her face drain of color. Olivia Hargrove thought she'd triumphed when her HOA erected that 8-foot razor wire fence, sealing off the road my family had traveled for decades. She'd just warned me of prison for trespassing on their land, her smugness infuriating, a newcomer dictating to a lifelong rancher. About boundaries. The trouble ignited on my 100-acre ranch in the rolling hills of Montana, a piece of earth my grandfather claimed back in 1955 when the West still felt wild and untamed. I'm Lucas Bennett, a third-generation cowboy who's weathered droughts, blizzards, and market crashes on this land. The ranch isn't just dirt and grass. It's a living testament to hard work. With barns weathered by time and pastures dotted with sturdy fences built by hand. Every morning, I'd rise with the sun, the cool air carrying the scent of dew-kissed sagebrush and the distant lowing of cattle. For years, it was peaceful. Me, my herd of 70 Hereford cattle, and the endless sky overhead, painted in hues of pink and gold at dawn. The routines were simple but satisfying. Checking water troughs, repairing windmills that creaked like old friends, and watching calves bound across the fields with that unbridled energy only youth possesses. But 3 years ago, everything shifted when I lost my wife, Grace, to a relentless illness that stole her away far too soon. Grace was the brains of our operation, with her background as a legal assistant from her days working in a small-town firm. She handled every contract, every deed, with a precision that kept us safe from the world's sharper edges. I'd often find her at the kitchen table, poring over maps and documents under the warm glow of the lamp, her glasses perched on her nose as she sipped black coffee. Her absence left a void, like the empty chair at that same table where her coffee mug still sits, gathering dust, a silent reminder of mornings filled with her laughter and wise counsel. Without her, the ranch felt heavier, the solitude more profound, but I pressed on, honoring her memory. By keeping the place running as she would have wanted. I managed alone, rising before dawn to check the cattle, mend fences, and haul feed. The scent of fresh hay mingled with the crisp mountain air, a rhythm that kept me grounded amid the grief. There were days when the wind would whisper through the pines, and I'd swear I could hear her voice, urging me to stay strong. But in 2020, the developers descended like locusts on a ripe field. They carved up the surrounding wilderness into Maplewood Heights, a sprawling subdivision of 250 identical McMansions, complete with manicured lawns, wrought iron gates, and streetlights that chased away the stars, turning the night sky into a hazy glow. The lead developer, a slick suit from the city with a clipboard and a perpetual grin, assured me they'd honor the old easement, a dirt road cutting through what was now their territory, but had been our family's lifeline since Grandpa's day. It was a handshake deal, the kind that meant something back then, rooted in mutual respect for the land and the people who worked it. For a while, harmony held. Construction trucks rumbled by with loads of lumber and concrete, kicking up dust that settled on my fences like a fine powder. I'd wave at the new families moving in, kids wide-eyed at the sight of real cowboys on horseback, their parents nodding politely from behind steering wheels of shiny sedans. The subdivision grew quickly, houses sprouting up like mushrooms after rain, each one boasting 3-car garages and backyard pools that seemed extravagant in our arid climate. I didn't mind the change much at first. Progress was inevitable, and as long as they left my access road alone, I figured we could coexist. But then came Olivia Hargrove. At 50, she exuded corporate polish, a gleaming black SUV that never saw a speck of mud, outfits tailored for power lunches and high-rises, and a vocabulary laced with terms like synergy and optimization. She'd relocated from the East Coast, chasing that mythical rural luxury lifestyle peddled in glossy magazines. Fresh air without the grit, nature without the nuisance. Our first encounter set the tone for what was to come. She marched up to my gate in impractical high heels, sinking into the gravel with each step, her nose wrinkled in disgust, as if the very earth offended her. "Mr. Bennett," she said, her voice clipped and authoritative, like a boardroom executive addressing a subordinate. "These agricultural odors are unacceptable. They're depreciating our property values. And that eyesore of a tractor parked in plain view? It clashes with our community's aesthetic standards. We expect better. I leaned on the fence post, calloused hands gripping the wood, suppressing a chuckle that bubbled up from deep within. Ma'am, my cattle have been grazing these hills since before you were born. This is a working ranch, not a golf course or a spa retreat. Her eyes narrowed into slits, and she spun on her heel, those ridiculous shoes clicking angrily as she retreated to her vehicle, leaving a trail of indignation in her wake. That was the spark. The moment I knew trouble was brewing. Little did I know how far she'd go to impose her vision of suburbia on my slice of the frontier. 6 months later, Olivia campaigned for HOA president on a platform of elevating community standards, a thinly veiled crusade to erase any trace of rural life that didn't fit her polished, urbanite dream. She held town hall meetings in the subdivision's clubhouse, her presentation slick with PowerPoint slides showing before and after images of enhanced neighborhoods, railing against incompatible land uses like my ranch. Her rhetoric was persuasive to the newcomers, who nodded along, dreaming of rising home values and pristine views unmarred by barns or livestock. She won in a landslide, her victory speech echoing with promises of a refined rural experience. I should have seen the storm brewing, but I was buried in calving season, my days filled with the lowing of cows giving birth, the sting of sweat in my eyes. Using their road immediately, threatening $1,000 daily fines and lawsuits if I didn't comply with community guidelines. Grace had always said, keep their words in writing, Lucas, they'll tie their own noose with their arrogance. So I filed them away in her old oak desk drawer and kept driving my truck down that familiar path, ruts worn deep from decades of use, delivering feed and tending to the herd. But Olivia escalated with the precision of a strategist. She convened emergency meetings, spinning yarns about health hazards from livestock, diseases leaping to humans, groundwater tainted by manure runoff, even claims that my operations were attracting wildlife that posed risks to children. Pure fabrication, pulled from thin air or dubious online sources. But fear spread like wildfire through the subdivision's group chats and newsletters. Neighbors I'd known for years, folks who'd bought eggs from my chickens or borrowed tools during storms, averted their eyes at the feed store. Whispers about plummeting property values turned into obsessions, with real estate apps checked obsessively and for sale signs popping up like weeds along the manicured curbs. The taste of my morning coffee grew bitter as I watched friendships fray under her influence. Then came the unanimous vote, held without my knowledge, 7 suburbanites in khakis and polos against one absent rancher who wasn't even invited. That Monday night, while I slept off a grueling day of repairs, contractors descended under cover of darkness, their trucks' headlights piercing the night like accusatory eyes. By dawn, an 8-foot chain-link monstrosity topped with razor wire blocked the road, gleaming menacingly in the first light. My only access, severed like a lifeline cut. I stood there, steam rising from my breath in the chill air, staring at the barrier that now separated me from my pastures. I called Olivia, my voice steady despite the rage boiling inside like a storm cloud. She feigned surprise. Mr. Bennett, you're trespassing on private HOA property. We've secured our community against threats. City folk don't grasp ranch life. Cattle need daily care, vet visits for vaccinations and checkups, feed trucks rumbling in twice a week with tons of hay and grain. Without the road, everything required helicopters, hay deliveries, skyrocketing from $50 a ton to $500. Veterinary calls becoming logistical nightmares that stressed the animals and drained my savings. But it wasn't just the costs, it was the legacy at stake. This land held Grandpa's sweat, Dad's determination, and Grace's quiet strength. Standing there, staring at the fence, I heard Grace's voice in the wind rustling the leaves. Don't let bullies win. Lucas, fight smart, not with fists. Sheriff Tom Riley, a high school buddy with a mustache as gray as mine and eyes that had seen too many disputes, pulled up in his patrol car with papers in hand. His face etched with regret. Restraining order, Lucas. Says you cut the fence, trespassing. I nearly laughed, the absurdity hitting me like a cold gust. Tom, we raced bikes on that road as kids. Fishing poles slung over our shoulders. But law trumps nostalgia. and Olivia had played it masterfully, framing me as the aggressor with affidavits from concerned residents. Court date. 6 weeks out. An eternity when calves needed feeding and fences mending. My lawyer, Sam Ellis, a no-nonsense type with a gray beard and a penchant for strong coffee, broke it over a steaming mug at his office. Backlog docket, Lucas. Judge is swamped with similar cases. Your cattle can't wait that long for justice. We brainstormed options, challenged the boundaries. When was the last professional survey? Grace's words echoed from our porch talks. Truth hides in courthouse dust, buried under years of neglect. I hired Hank, a grizzled surveyor with a chain-smoking habit and a transit scope older than me, who mapped the land with the precision of an artist. After days of trudging through brush, staking markers, and measuring with chains that clinked like old coins, he grinned through a puff of smoke. Fence is 15 feet on your side, son. And that 1965 easement your grandpa filed? Recorded solid as rock in the county books. Digging deeper into musty archives. HOA docs were a sham. No proper state filing, no legal entity status. Their authority was smoke and mirrors, as binding as a child's promise. Olivia's harassment intensified, a siege of petty tyranny designed to wear me down. Anonymous complaints flooded in about my roosters crowing at dawn, as if nature bent to HOA rules. County inspectors swarmed my property like ants, hunting phantom violations in barn wiring or water storage. Safety patrols from the subdivision set up with binoculars trained on my land, claiming to monitor for suspicious activity, while health department probes forced me to waste days proving my livestock operation met every regulation, from feed quality to waste management. Each incident ate into my time and money, pulling me from the ranch work that sustained me, but Sam documented it all meticulously. Pattern of bad faith. Judges despise it when it smells of harassment. Trespassers from her crew appeared one afternoon, clipboards in hand, measuring environmental impact zones on my property without permission. I photographed their license plates, faces set in determined lines, and shooed them off with a warning shout that echoed across the hills. Porch evenings became my refuge, the wind through the pines carrying memories of Grace, and I planning our days under the stars. I vowed, no more yielding. This woman thought she could erase 60 years of history with her rules and fences. She'd picked the wrong fight. Olivia went nuclear on social media and local news, turning the dispute into a spectacle. Hashtag campaigns like hashtag #MaplewoodSafe trended locally, with photos of my cattle captioned as threats to community health. She appeared on the evening news, standing before the fence in a blazer, voice trembling with feigned concern. We're protecting our families from this dangerous individual. Petitions circulated for condemning my ranch as a public nuisance, signatures gathered from neighbors who'd never set foot on my land, but were convinced I was brewing apocalypse in my pastures. She even pressured County Commissioner Bradley Kent, a politician up for re-election, into promising full investigations, despite my spotless 40-year record of compliance. But while she played media maven, I unearthed gold in Grace's old files, tucked away in a cedar chest that smelled of her perfume. Developer clauses in the original subdivision agreement mandated perpetual access for pre-existing properties like mine, and there were unpaid $2.5 million infrastructure bonds, the HOA's legal liability if they existed at all. The gate mechanism? Squarely on my land per Hank's survey. Grace's lesson from her legal days rang clear. Control the access. Control the power in any dispute. Precedents from similar cases allowed tolls for private roads used by others. I researched feverishly in the quiet hours, law books spread across the kitchen table, discovering I could charge $5 per vehicle, reasonable by legal standards, but enough to bite back. Installed security cameras caught Olivia's overnight attempt to move the fence, workers hammering. Under moonlight, their whispers captured on video as vandalism and trespassing evidence. The media tide turned. My underdog tale of a lone rancher versus suburban overreach resonated on regional news, with interviews highlighting the human cost. Operating expenses mounted, helicopter vets for sick calves, stressed cattle losing weight from disrupted routines, but my determination grew like the sturdy oaks on the hill. A hired private investigator exposed Olivia's desperation. Her own home facing foreclosure, embezzling HOA funds through ghost consulting companies to stay afloat, all while eyeing my land for developer kickbacks that would net her millions in a forced sale. Grace's law books yielded angles on adverse possession and harassment suits. Neighbors began to ally. Elena Vasquez, a retired teacher, fined $300 for painting her mailbox the wrong shade according to non-existent rules, knocked on my door with stories of similar bullying. We turned my kitchen into a war room. Sam scratching notes, Elena sharing county insider knowledge, off-duty Tom offering law enforcement tips, and retired Judge Harold Grant volunteering strategic advice over coffee that steamed the windows. The toll booth rose from salvaged wood and metal, equipped with electronic card readers and signs that read "Private Road Toll Required," with a humorous addendum. Complaints? Take a number. It was functional yet a statement, drawing chuckles from locals who stopped to watch. The community fractured along lines of old-timers versus newcomers. Olivia's past surfaced. Through digs, 2 prior communities where she'd used the same playbook, leaving bankrupt HOAs and bitter residents. Media exposed risks to emergency services, with the fire chief noting tripled response times to my ranch. Psychological preparation became key. Anticipating her sabotage, we created backups for every scenario. Financial education spread as I shared how to research easements. Through county records, emphasizing professional surveys to avoid disasters. Olivia's midnight hammer swing on the toll booth was caught on camera. Dents in the metal, red paint scrawled "fraud" on my truck, her face clear in high definition despite cut power lines, thanks to battery backups. Sheriff Tom arrested her for criminal mischief that dawn. Her mug shot a portrait of disheveled defeat. HOA board members resigned en masse, fleeing liability. I offered mercy in a letter, public apology, and full restitution for damages, a chance to settle before trial. She responded with tone-deaf PR from a Dallas firm, spinning tales of harassment while rallying safety events that portrayed my herd as menaces. Backlash surged. Local businesses boycotted her real estate firm. Foreclosures cascaded as residents balked at toll fees, and her developer deal crumbled under legal scrutiny. Federal investigators took interest after I forwarded embezzlement evidence, probing for tax fraud and more. Her scorched earth tactics peaked, hiring guards in black SUVs patrolling like an occupation force, attempting to have me committed on fabricated danger claims, spreading rumors of cattle diseases to trigger inspections. EPA complaints about runoff forced costly tests, proving my practices were exemplary. All documented, each lie adding to her undoing. The community center showdown loomed, tension thick as Montana fog in the packed hall. Olivia's slides accused me of terror. I rose calmly, projecting surveys, fraud records, vandalism footage, bribery audio, and land grab contracts. Gasps turned to fury, the room erupting as she lunged for the mic. Cuffs clicked as federal agents arrested her mid-screech for mail fraud, embezzlement, conspiracy, her lawyer bolting for the exit. The fence was raised at dawn. HOA dissolved unanimously amid apologies. Olivia was sentenced to 2 years in federal prison, ordered to pay full restitution from traced funds. My ranch flourished anew, pastures green and cattle thriving. I launched Grace's Legal Aid Fund, scholarships for rural women in paralegal training to defend property rights. Annual barbecues healed divides. Property values rebounded in a model of voluntary cooperation. A website shared resources, easement guides, HOA red flags, legal protections. Yet controversy lingers. Was my toll pure vengeance or justified defense? Did I escalate a neighborly spat into war, or was it necessary for justice? HOAs need reform, but at what cost to community? Unity? The fight taught that property rights are fragile, requiring vigilance. What if your legacy was fenced out? Comment below. Was this a fair fight or overkill? Share your views on property rights versus community harmony. Who's right or wrong? Tell us where you're from. And like/subscribe for more tales of triumph over tyranny.